Hey, so I wanted to make a video about an ad campaign that I came across that I think really perfectly encapsulates what's going on in fashion culture. Again, sets the precedent for how we're going to talk about fashion in 2025. And so I was on Coolville Mag's website, which I'm sure you guys use and already know about, but if you don't, it's like an alternative magazine website. And so the campaign that I saw was Balenciaga, shot by Juergen. Balenciaga is a fashion house initially designed by Cristobal Balenciaga. It's currently headed by Demna Vasalia, and Demna's Balenciaga, I would say, is known for their comedic collaborations and ironic cultural commentary in their runway shows, a strong product and merchandise team, and a commitment to couture and tailoring and dressmaking, as well as dressing celebrities for the red carpet, and kind of a meticulous attention to detail when it comes to ready to wear as well. Juergen Teller is a high fashion photographer who's known for images that cause discomfort, mostly because of how they highlight the vulnerability of the subject and their imperfection and how they humanize people, which we've talked about why that is so uncomfortable for people to see several times. In terms of this campaign, it's the Spring 2025 campaign, which is apt, right? This is what we're going into very soon. Fingers crossed. It was so cold outside today. Oh my God. But it's the Spring 2025 campaign for Balenciaga, and it features chairs and sofas that are set outside alone with no human subjects in the images. It exists alongside another campaign for the fashion house with a group of talents in the same setting. So there's Kim Petras, the Olympic pistol holder, and then some models, and they're sat on the chairs or standing next to the chairs. And it focuses on the accessories and the shoulder bags and the shoes. So the way that it's presented on the Coolville magazine website, it's just chairs. So I wanted to get into some of the themes of the photo shoot so that we can look at, broader fashion culture. And I think the main overarching theme is subversion. Obviously, in general, Balenciaga is kind of always subverting the expected ways of framing fashion imagery and fashion shows. I think the first thing that came to mind when I was seeing this campaign was this idea of isolation and loneliness, or even alienation. We've talked about labor alienation in the last few videos, but I think when we're looking at this image, what we're seeing is these pieces of furniture that are left alone in these outdoor environments. So you have the large brown couch outside of the two doors and the row of chairs that are sat outside with leaves on the ground. And to me, this speaks to the idea of loneliness, right? You have the idea of commodities being equated to success and accomplishment and supposedly fulfillment. Like, you want to earn this money because then you'll be happy. We have these luxury symbols, or like Balenciaga as a luxury symbol, kind of representing the fact that it doesn't necessarily equate to meaningfully connecting with people. And instead, you're collecting all of these commodities and goods rather than connecting. When, for a lot of people, the expectation and the anticipation when it comes to achieving and having success and financial independence, the goal is so that you can impress other people or connect with other people or meet new people or be accepted by people in a way that you feel like you weren't otherwise. And then it's maybe trying to highlight the idea that you'll actually just end up alone. And this is like a symbol for that and a way of representing it. Also saw the idea of alienation in an increasingly digital world. Fashion used to unite people and create these ideas of collectives or represent collectives even. It's instead creating environments with no semblance of life. And this is a symbolic representation of that. And we have access to people 24/7 through our phones, but we're not necessarily making that kind of meaningful connection. And again, when you see the luxury symbol with no humans near it, it may be a representation of, the ways that we're seeing success and luxury and things like that as a representation for the fact that it doesn't actually equate to personal fulfillment. People use luxury symbols for esteem and fellowship with other people, and instead, in such anxious times, it repels people even. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, repelling people. I also considered that maybe showing these lonely chairs and lonely sofas, it could be like a reflective point. It could be a Black Mirror moment where the goal is to show you these empty chairs so that you can think about how you're situated or how you're sat within the broader cultural context when it comes to the meaning of luxury symbols and how you look at them and relate to them. This is just, you know, abstract ways of looking at this. I think the next section would be the idea that Balenciaga deconstructs traditional luxury. This visual story is a representation of Balenciaga's place in the broader fashion industry, where their goal is to kind of highlight these visions of luxury and fashion and beauty in spaces that other fashion houses don't necessarily highlight that. And then the rest of the fashion culture follows suit. Demna creates fashion that transforms the public's idea of what luxury is or can be. One example would be like meticulously scrutinizing the dimensions of streetwear or the way that he patterns the t-shirts or the sweatshirts. This is something he talked to Kathy Horan about, which I referenced in the last video as well. And like deciding this is high fashion, this is luxurious, and it's not trivial that he spends so much time, you know, adapting and editing and optimizing a t-shirt. These, you know, unconventional pieces of luxury fashion, and it is high fashion and it is luxurious. And I think the outcome of that I think people don't always consider is that then we broaden the idea of what luxury can be to be more inclusive and expansive, and then we demand more from all of fashion, right? When you're showing that this is what luxury can be, or these symbols are what luxury can be, it reinforces the idea of creating expectations of fashion that all parts of fashion are well crafted, not just couture gowns. The expectation is that anything that's a symbol of luxury should be high quality and should be well maintained and should suit and serve the audience. Casting the sofas against the decaying outdoor scenes, it can speak to the idea of breaking down what we traditionally see as luxury symbols. This wouldn't be the first time that they've kind of created those forms of contrast. I think their use of sweaters and streetwear and sweatsuits in general, I think, is one example. All of these ways of reconstructing the ideas of luxury by juxtaposing, you know, environment versus tradition, or just generally upending the traditions of luxury fashion, which I think is really, you know, Balenciaga's thing. And I think it maybe a branching off of that idea would be like reinforcing the idea of creating tension between high fashion and grit, and kind of maybe interrogating why high fashion can't include grittier spaces or, you know, more realistic, complex spaces. It brings the idea of fashion to the real world and it contextualizes it amongst the real world to highlight the way that luxury fashion exists and operates in people's lives. Even when you try to isolate yourself as an ultra wealthy, you know, customer of the luxury brands, you still have to operate within the real world to some capacity and to some degree. And so kind of placing it back there brings us back down to reality. And I think that brings me to the next way of examining these images. I think looking at this through the lens of critiquing seeing the absurdity of luxury and maintenance of these conventions and ideas. Putting these pristine sofas in these kind of grittier outdoor environments, to me, kind of emphasizes the absurdity of excess and luxury and having these pristine objects and commodities in a mundane or even gritty world, or even an evil, ugly world, right? A more complex and complicated world, or a world that's not suited for them. These sofas were not created to be outdoors, or neither were the chairs. That they kind of draw out the absurdity of all of the parts of the way that we interact with the luxury fashion world and the fashion system at large, and each other, and trends, and partying, and identity. Like the ways that we grapple with and work to reconcile identity, like there is a sense of absurdity and like the theatrics and the clownery of it all. I think that's kind of what Balenciaga pulls from for a lot of the work that they do, and I think that this is another example of that. They're casting beautiful, pristine furniture in some instances against more gritty environments, and it makes you realize maybe how ridiculous excess and maintaining these kind of pristine objects can be amongst the political and cultural horrors and climate that we have, and the kind of complex environment that we have. I think Balenciaga complicates that in general and kind of presents that complexity in general. Fall 2022 ready to wear in the tundra is an example of that. I think the mud show is an example of that. It's highlighting these extreme weather conditions or outdoor environments against high fashion, I think the idea is to position us to think about not only just like climate and whatever and environmental impact, but also like absurdity. That we do this and we care about these more serious issues. It brings the audience back to how unreasonable and complicated it is to see luxurious pieces in such a bad world. It's almost the inverse of the sweatshirts on the high fashion runway. And in general, it's complicating the context in which we interpret fashion and fashion symbols, or we don't, in order to make you confront that level of absurdity. And I think it also has like a nostalgic element to it, which is the next conclusion you could come to. These look like grandma's house or like mother's house. And to me, that's a connection to Demna's direct references to Cristobal's Balenciaga, especially in his couture work. So this idea of nostalgia and referencing something from the deep past and appreciating it and having reverence for it and then putting it in this completely other context, right? That's kind of what Demna is doing when he's putting these, not only these couture looks on celebrities that don't always seem super aligned with Balenciaga, but also that to the outside person, of course, it's up to Demna what aligns with Balenciaga, but you know what I mean? He's putting it on celebrities, but then he's also putting it on the same runway with like these streetwear sweatshirts and oversized meme clothes and ironic clothes. It seems like the sofa outside is a representation for that exact same idea. So it's like nostalgia, back to reality, and the mundane all in one. It's a reference to his referencing. The way that he does referencing, where he pulls references and then he puts them in a context where you're just like, what? And you're trying to understand it, and like you technically can sit on a sofa outside, but it's just like, why would you think to do that? And it's challenging the fantasy realm and grounding us back in reality by like casting these two things against each other. You're referencing these things that, you know, are made pristine, sometimes status symbols within the home, and they're honestly like misrepresentations of reality in the home a lot of times. Like when people keep a couch really nice or put plastic over the couch to make sure that it's preserved and pristine, especially like moms and grandmas and stuff. The idea is to upkeep and maintain something in a way that misrepresents the truth about it, or like the fact that it's completely unused and not actually serving its function, but to use it as a status symbol to impress others, which goes back to like the absurdity, the alienation and isolation, and all aspects of this whole thing. But it's like this idea of using that nostalgia and casting that kind of mundane at-home memory into the present and also into a gritty, weird world. I don't know. I think all in all, my conclusion is just that this is a great representation of the fashion house and the ways that we can look at and conceptualize the future, or like the present, I should say, of fashion. It's like we should be seeing these things as really, really complicated and layered and multidimensional, in my opinion. And I think we should be, you know, critiquing or at least acknowledging the absurdity and the ways that people are wielding nostalgia and memory in fashion images, and the ways that people are, you know, juxtaposing visuals against the broader culture and environment, and the ways that we're participating in it and benefiting from it all at once. And I think that this campaign does a really good job to sum that all up. So this was hopefully an easy, quick video. It's looking like it says 20 minutes on the screen for some reason. That's so weird. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about it, because I think there are tons of things to tease out of it that I'm not getting all the way at, and I'm interested to see what it made you guys think about. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for the love on all of my videos. I love to talk through these things. The MM6 video and Prada videos coming soon, and then the other Prada videos also coming soon. I love you.